Okay, here we go. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another edition of A Handful of Hope. I'm so happy and grateful to have Dan Clark with us here today, who previously worked as a website and app developer, switched careers from building an advertising agency, and came across Brain FM. In his first session, he bought an account and was so excited after a week of use. He needed to be part of the company. He called 12 times. He finally got a job and worked the first month for free. Fast forward, he's now the CEO. Dan is always excited about how technology can change the world. Dan, welcome, and thank you so much for being here.
My pleasure. Glad to be here.
I'm glad to have you. So let's start with that 12 no's. I find that most people, they hear no once and that's it, or maybe they won't even take the no. They already have a no made up in their mind that it's going to happen. How do you persevere after you get the 11 or 12 no's?
So one of my favorite advice I got from a friend a long time ago was no and not asking is the same thing, right? So for the people that already made up their minds, asking or deciding it's a no already is the same exact thing. So I try to start there. Second is, really about the mission of why you want to talk to someone. I really strongly believe in win-win-wins. So how can I win? How can the other person win? And how can our wins be so strong together that a bystander, wins as well, right? And depending on how strong those wins are, has fueled me, especially in that conversation, to reach out so many times because I knew I could help Brain FM by getting involved. I knew that it would help Brain FM for me being involved, and I knew we'd help a bunch of users as well. And that was some of that persistence on why I kept calling them in a in a polite, respectful way, kind of thing. It was those follow-ups and that persistence that paid off in the end.
Your core focus, Dan, in that follow-up process, was it what you thought you could do for the company? Was it what you thought you could do for the users? Was there one spark that seemed to provide the greatest fuel for you?
The biggest spark was trying the product the first time. I have a interesting background where I dropped out of high school. I have a second-degree black belt and was used to help teach kids on how to be their best self. And got out of that because I went into tech and advertising and building companies and really overcompensated for financial gains. I was always involved in companies, so I know I could grow them. I had a track record of doing so, but it was using Brain FM and hitting that aha moment of, oh my gosh, this can change the world. And I want to be part of this rocket ship. And that's really what united me on saying, I want to be part of this. I know I can help you. I know, I feel almost called, I had this something inside of me that's saying, I'm going to regret it if I don't try and at least get a no from them, because I never really got a no. I just followed up persistently. And that was the difference.
And so what ultimately led to them saying yes? Was it just that you wore them down? Was it that they saw your tenacity and your persistence? Did they finally come around to where they saw the value? What was it from their perspective? Do you think that finally said, no, we've told this guy no 12 times, he's not going away. Let's give him a shot.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, they didn't necessarily say no 12 times. They just didn't answer me 12 times. So that's probably a small difference. But as far as the reason why we started together was, I made an offer they couldn't refuse. I said, hey, listen, I have all this experience. I've doubled, tripled companies in the past. I've done, well with this track record. I can show you, experience points. I can show you those things. And then also, I believe in this mission so much that I'm going to come in, I'm going to work for free. And then you're going to see I provide so much value that's when we can figure out a arrangement. And it was literally like, from their standpoint, like, sure, what do we have to lose kind of thing. And that's what started the relationship.
And you've mentioned the mission a few times. So let's talk about that. What is Brain FM and what is the mission?
Yeah, sure. So Brain FM, we make functional music to help people focus, relax, and sleep better. And what we're basically doing is, and this has been tried to be done before, where you create music to make someone perform better. The difference is that we have a patented system to create rhythmic pulses in music that when you're listening to it, it aligns your functional networks of your brain to be able to slip into focus, relax, or sleep on demand. We all have neural patterns. So you and I are talking right now. We have a certain neural pattern. The people that are listening to us have a neural pattern. And there's a lot of study with EEGs and fMRIs of what those are. And we've been able to, again, create those rhythmic pulses that your brain mirrors and then is able to adapt and be able to jump into. And what's really cool about it is it doesn't matter what age you are, what gender you are, what language you speak. It matters you're human because it's a physiological effect to hearing a stimulus. So, you know, that was one of the things, again, that drove me to be so excited about this, is because there's real science. We have grants from National Science Foundation. We're doing studies with ADHD, autism, stroke care, you know, all this stuff. There's this real science that shows up, and that we've been able to create a company that unites bleeding edge neuroscience with a product for consumers that basically gives everyone the ability to press an on button and then switch into a state and then stay there. So there's a lot there, I know, but
I'm curious, Dan, what is in that? And I want to jump ahead to more global, and then we'll come back down.
Sure.
In your vision of the world, if everybody's been able to tap into this and they're really accessing their best self, what does that vision of the world look like for you?
Yeah, let me step backwards and then I'll step forward into that question. So I mentioned earlier that I have a secondary black belt. I started teaching martial arts when I was 16, but I started doing martial arts when I was 11. I was a chubby, shy kid that got picked on every single day. And I was bullied so badly that I used to cry and fight my parents to go to school. And going and doing martial arts, learning physical movement that translated to giving me more confidence, allowed me to be the better version of myself. And I strongly believe that if I didn't do martial arts, I wouldn't be who you are talking to right now. I believe that being able to learn that you're really good at something, being able to unlock that power, being able to consistently perform really is a barrier that people have, being able to accomplish their goals. I have a very, I guess, bullish stance on humanity, which we're, you know, for the most part, really good people that want to help people and want to improve the world. And really the blocker is that sometimes we can't because life gets in the way. Things are hard, things are challenging, you know? And if I can make everyone's 1% better, or make someone being able to select and always have their on mode, on demand, like we were talking about, oh my gosh, like how much can I impact people to achieve their goals? And if everyone's achieving their goals, I think the world's gonna be a better place because of it.
And some other practical applications, would this be applicable for people who struggle with stress and anxiety, people who have insomnia, who have struggle sleeping because of neural patterns? Would this be helpful with some of those?
All of the above. So we have people that have PTSD for 20 years and they write us an email and they're like, I am crying. I haven't slept this well since I was 16 years old. Oh my gosh, you know? So we have that for, you know, all ranges between focus, relax, and sleep. And we really pick those activity states because it's what people are familiar with, but we can do all these different things. And it's the same technology that is applicable where we're doing things with pre and post operations, you know, ADHD, autism, Alzheimer's, all that fun stuff. But it's the application of saying, how can we be a +1 product, right? So whether you have problems focusing or you have no problems focusing, but you want to perform better, that's really what this tool is about.
I'd be curious about some of the research you're finding with working with Alzheimer's patients. So I lost my grandmother to Alzheimer's several years ago. And what was really fascinating with her, she had been a classically trained opera singer.
Mm-hmm.
And as she was losing, her cognitive ability was diminishing. She was losing the ability to speak and communicate and do all those things. What she could still recognize to the very end was music. And I remember sometimes my cousin would play the piano and there would be a song that was a very familiar song to her, and you would see this kind of light switch on in her eye. And it was all of a sudden there was something familiar. And I imagine it being like her lost and trapped in the woods. And all of a sudden there was this light that came in that showed her a path that was familiar at one point. And then sometimes she would even try to sing. And it was sad, but inspiring at the same time. It was sad because she couldn't, and she recognized it. So even though she knew she was in the woods, even though there was the path being illuminated out, she couldn't quite get out. But it was inspiring to think that still existed in her, and if that there was some science really focused in on this, what could we accomplish in doing work with that disease?
Yeah, so there's a lot there. I want to first state that some of the things, like our consumer product and the things that we have today for people that has been tested and tried and true, and we can talk about a lot of that stuff in detail. Some of the stuff in the pilot studies that I bring up because it talks about the validity that we have, like we wouldn't be working with different kinds of hospitals and treatment centers if we didn't have science that has been shown to be effective. But a lot of that stuff is in pilot studies. A lot of that stuff is trying to really unlock what can we do with the technology that we have, because we've been able to prove it's so effective already in certain areas on a really deep level. And we can go deep and then we can come up for air real quick. Is the way Brain FM works is through amplitude modulation. So it's the rhythmic pulses turning on and off in certain patterns. Our brains are incredibly complex, so we need incredibly complex patterns and systems to be able to help our brains stay in certain states. And it's through a process of entrainment, which is the syncing of your functional networks communicating together, kind of like a Christmas tree. Instead of it all blinking at different times, it starts blinking at the same time, which creates this prop in your brain that allows us to, help redirect blood flow. What's interesting about it, and some of the preliminary research that's been shown in papers in similar organizations, not through us, but through like MIT and stuff, is that your neurons develop plaque over time for in Alzheimer's. And there's something that is underneath the neuron called the microglia. And the microglia, I'm not the neuroscientist. We can bring on Kevin another time, but the microglia is kind of like the plumbing for your neurons. And what happens is it becomes plugged. Then because it doesn't get the nutrients and stuff, then it develops plaque. And by doing the property of entrainment and having these pulses, it's almost like a plunger on your system, and it breaks up the plaque and allows people to then further have your neurons fire more, because the property of Alzheimer's and other kinds of things, to my understanding, and again, I'm not the neuroscientist here, but to my understanding is that your neurons can still fire and talk to each other. It's just reduced transmission. And because that happens, to millions and millions of neurons in your brain, that is the effect of Alzheimer's. So it's still in its really early stages. There's some really promising stuff coming out of different research centers, and some stuff that we're also pursuing. But yeah, there's some interesting stuff there. And the things that you're mentioning about her listening to music and hearing things, that's actually a completely different set of the brain and system that is more towards memory, and it's very interesting. The brain is so diverse, and we know more about Pluto than we do about how our brain works on a fundamental level. And it's really exciting to work with that, but it's also incredibly complex. And that's why I always bring up the science, because we are a science first company. And there's a lot of people that claim they can do what we can do, but they don't necessarily have the same science to show that. And I like to lead with that, because at the end of the day, I was a user first. I was a skeptic the first time I used the product. And then after using it and really learning about the science, that's when I jumped full on.
If you didn't mind, Dan, could you explain that a little bit about what was your first experience like? So, who were you, where were you at the time when you first come across Brain FM? And then you decide, okay, what the heck, I'm gonna try it. And then what was the noticeable difference you had after using it?
Yeah, so Personally, I was running an advertising company. I was a digital director there, and I really wanted a career change. It's probably the short story. I just didn't really feel like I was helping people anymore. So I made up my decision to leave, and I have always been what is labeled as like a biohacker, trying all the different kinds of things. And I came across this company when it just launched, Brain FM. And I give you some backstory, used to be very sensitive to focus. So I was a developer mainly, that's, my thing. And I learned that I could work from 10 p.m. to 4 a.m. at night. And I could always get into that special state. And people now call it flow state. And I could find it, and it was great. And then even after I stopped developing, I would still do that. And I remember trying Brain FM the first time because I'm always willing to try something new. And it was like, I don't know, like noon, 1, when my brain's still like not on. And I remember dropping into the same exact flow state as before. And I worked for like an hour, and it felt like I worked for 3. It was amazing. And I remember being like, there is no way this works. This is just music. And I tried to break it, and I tried to stay up all night and do it, or I didn't eat anything, or I did, whatever. And consistently it continued to work. And that's where I was like, I have to be part of this thing.
So when I'm hearing you talk about it, if I could try to break it down into some simple terms, and please navigate me at how on or off I am. It's almost like what I'm hearing is, the human experience is really interesting, right? So humans are mostly a byproduct of habits, right? So we're going through the day, and we're habituating emotional experiences, how we're interacting with the world, belief systems, values, et cetera, et cetera. And within all those complex systems, we have a kind of like a light switch, if you will, that if we were to turn it on, that light switch would create the possibility for us to have an alternative experience. Where we would normally feel stressed, we'd feel more relaxed, or where we'd normally feel, where we'd normally have hard time sleeping, we'd be able to fall asleep. And to me, kind of what I'm hearing about with this is it's almost like using Brain FM and really diving into the processes. It's a tool to help us flip that switch.
Correct.
Okay.
Exactly. And I believe that as humans, the only difference between us now and 10,000 years ago are the tools that we have. There's some really interesting stuff that I was reading recently, and our minds have evolved, or evolution is not the right word, but our minds are different now because of the tools that we have in our environment versus 2,000 years ago. And a really great example of that is, when I got my first cell phone, right? I remember having every single person's number, in my head. And then like 2 years later, I didn't have it anymore. And it's because of the tools that become like these almost psychotechnologies that we then can go further and do different things. And I believe that the better tools that we have access to, the easier it is to solve the problem.
You remember how cool it was when the first cell phones, where you could finally program numbers into it, but it wasn't like there was an address book. You had to put some code in to get a number coming up, and then you had to remember whose number that was even going to dial.
Yep, I totally remember that. Yeah, it's been a long time from then.
Yeah,
it was magic back then.
Oh yeah, it was, and now it's just expectation, right? If it doesn't do it in 5 seconds ago, we think there's something wrong with the phone.
And that's a really good metaphor, because that's actually where I feel like we're going in with functional music. So if you look at it, music has changed the world. It has been around. And if you look at big tech companies like Apple, right, their whole thing was obviously computers and stuff, but they revolutionized music. What's really interesting is music, and especially like podcasts and all that, is very popular right now. One of the reasons I believe that is because our headphones and our listening mediums are so much better. So now, like, can you imagine if you had to listen to this podcast by like getting a CD? Like you could just stream it anywhere in the world, and you could also put sound canceling headphones on, or listen in the car, or whatever it may be. And it's just so easy, and it's also high fidelity. And I believe that now that we have the technology of these really great headphones, these really great streaming services, internet, is really, really great anywhere in the world, or for the most part. Now we're expecting more from the content that we're consuming. So now we're looking for better quality podcasts like yourself. We're looking for almost like a friend that's buy earphones or buy podcasts. But then I think people are going to start expecting more from what they're listening to, especially when we now are having wearables where you can see that, because of the stuff that we're talking about, you can actually see in a wearable. And as people start using wearables more and more and understanding them, I think that's going to cross us up into the next dimension of what can technology do to make myself a better human being.
Yeah, I definitely, I think there's going to be some exciting things that we're going to see develop and be able to. Dan, this is kind of a personal question, but I'm curious.
Yeah.
As you've utilized Brain FM and as you've been able to kind of really dial into the benefits of the tools of it, have you found that it's changed how you experience traditional media, traditional music? Has it changed it? Do you find yourself?
Good question.
You know what I mean? Like, do you find yourself more? I won't. I'll let you answer, and then I'll talk more.
Yeah, of course. So I think it does. I think it doesn't necessarily make it. I experience it differently. If anything, I kind of like music more, to be completely honest. I'm very much into live shows and really excited when they come back soon. But I think that now it's like picking out what tool for the job, right? So, when I'm doing deep work, I don't even think about listening to anything else besides Brain FM, because the results are so much higher fidelity. And now it's like this button I press. But I still listen to all my electronic and EDM and my, all this different kinds of music when I'm, just personally enjoying, like, one enjoyment. When I have friends over to the house, I put on, like lo-fi or music that's not Brain FM, because I just I want the enjoyment. I want the entertainment of it. And it's always funny because they always think it's Brain FM, because they're like, why isn't it? But it's because it's two different sections of stuff. And I want to make sure that I still know, I still have that difference kind of thing. Other people, they listen to Brain FM way more than I do, like 9 hours a day on repeat, and then they play it on sleep. And if that works for them, then so on be it. But I do think that the cool thing about a tool is some people need the tool or want to use the tool, 1 hour a week, and some people want to use the tool 10 hours a week, and anyone can decide. And that's the fun part.
I would imagine too, Dan, like one of the byproducts of this would be you would see an evolution in your relationships, in the sense of if you're more focused and optimizing yourself to perform better, it seems like too that you would be operating in a higher state, a higher vibration, whatever that is, then there would be a reciprocal benefit with how you interact with other people, and vice versa too. Like, it's kind of like, people, 10 friends hang out and they all have a goal of losing weight, but nobody goes and starts the nutrition and exercise. The collective group probably doesn't change much. But if you have the one person that starts doing it and they start to see some results, and another person does, and another person does, and pretty soon the whole group's on board. I'm wondering if you have any sort of experience with that, or have you observed that at all in your relationships as a byproduct of this?
Really great question. It's really hard for me to untangle. So I came to Brain FM 5 years ago, and came on as a tech person, to leading the tech team, to becoming CEO, to getting ready to relaunch and rebrand the company, which we're just getting ready to do right now, and start scaling. And I have definitely learned things along the way, and the people that I have hung out has changed. And it would be hard for me to untangle personally that story from using Brain FM, because just personally, like, I've always done both, right?
Yeah.
I do have people that, like, we have a love letters channel where people write in, and we do have people that have similar stories, though, where ever since they started using this product, they did A, B, or C. And sometimes it's like, wow, I've never had a clean house before, and I just put this on and I can clean and I get it done, and that's really interesting to the people that are saying, hey, I have tracked myself using Brain FM and not using Brain FM, and I can attribute making $1 million extra a year to Brain FM because of the amount of focus that I do and the ROI for my job. And you have other people that, they're like, listen, you have saved my life because it was on a negative path, and to personal details I won't explain, but like you have become a pillar in my life to kind of stabilize, kind of thing as well. So there's definitely a lot of personal stories that people have shared. And I think that's what's so phenomenal about, creating this tool set, because people find tools what means for them. But I do think that if you want to accomplish your goals and you start accomplishing your goals, that does have an effect on your life, who you hang out with, and, what you're striving for.
Dan, we're coming up on time here. And before I ask my final question, where can people find and connect with you online?
Yeah, sure. So you can go to brain.fm. You can search us in the app stores, or you can go on the website. Depending on when this comes out, we have a brand new brand launching, which I'm really excited for. You can also reach out to me at daniel@brain.fm if you want to shoot me an email. I'm happy to hear about your personal experience. Would love everyone to give it a shot.
And everyone too, Dan and his team have actually made a very generous offer to give any of you who would like to try it out a 1-month free trial. And so we'll make sure those links are included with the notes to try out Brain FM completely free of charge for 1 month and be able to experience the benefits of it yourself. Dan, so in 5 years, you go from contacting 12 times with no response to working for free for a month to becoming a CEO. Jumping ahead 5 more years as the CEO, as the leader of the company, what does the world look like from that perspective for you? Now that Brain FM has scaled and grown to the capacity, the goal that you set out for it, what is the net benefit for humanity because of that?
So I think that's a very multi-layered question. I think on one level, it's having the ability for people, again, to be their best self on demand in their pocket, whatever that means to them, whether it's increased focus, relaxed sleeping, or really being able to control their mental state. I think what's really exciting about that too is we've been trying really hard to do workout music, and that's super complex. And I would assume that in 5 years we have it figured out. So that's exciting. And I think that itself is worth doing alone. I think the other side is, what can this do medically? What can this do to increase healthcare? And there's a lot of stuff that there's some things that like we're just discovering, kind of thing. We're doing things with pre and post-op, and we're finding post-operations, if we play specific types of these rhythmic pulses, that we can help people wake up from surgery like 200, 300% faster in pilot studies. Mm-hmm. And it's amazing. But that's super helpful because, especially for surgery, especially, doing these things, especially as the older you get, it's scary, but it's also like, risky, and if we can reduce someone's stress before surgery and then help them wake up less groggy and recover faster, wow. There's some things in pain management. There's a lot of opportunities that we're looking into. And I really think that, what's really cool about what we've tried to create our mission for, it's a company to help people, but it's also a company to see how deep we can help people too. And the more people we get to serve, or the more people that are able to use this consumer-wise, it also helps us on the healthcare side, and vice versa. And it's kind of this intermingled thing of, let's see, how much we can help people. And then it's our mission to be able to do that.
That's awesome. Everyone, this is one you're going to want to rewatch and re-listen and really do a deep dive into. Dan shared so generously of his own journey. We start off about the persistence of keep going. When you hear no, remember, no is the same as not asking. And we don't know until we find out. So if you really want something and you have a vision compelling enough, keep asking, keep going for it. So many of us often handicap the possibility of even creating a better business, life, relationship, because we're unwilling to ask. And then we hear the first no as just no instead of next opportunity. going in and diving in deeper into the science of brain FM and what can unlock the idea of being your best self on demand within access in your pocket. What a great thing. How many of us could benefit from sleeping better, reducing stress, reducing anxiety, performing at a higher level, having better focus, being able to perform at our work better? To look at really harnessing what neuroscience is discovering about the brain and how these certain rhythmic pulses can stimulate. And I love the idea of going through and accessing and rewiring blood flow and whatnot. And I don't want to butcher the science that Dan much more expertly laid out than I did, but it's really worth considering that what possibility lies between our own two ears. And if we were to begin to optimize that, just the same as we try to optimize a car or any sort of other machine we use, what could we do in terms of our own capacity? I find that planes fly better and cars run further when they're full on fuel and they're well maintained. And I imagine the same is going to be true for our own brains and our own selves. And so the question to ask all of ourselves is, what benefit can I get from using a tool like Brain FM? I love that Dan noted that there was the saying that the big difference between the brains of several thousand years ago versus now is the tools that we use. So many of us have tools that are disposable, and here's a new one. Don't let it be a tool that sits on your shed and just collects dust because it's never used. The real magic of life is when we pick up our tools, we put them to work, and we use them to build the business, the life, the relationships we want to live. And it sounds like Brain FM could be one of those incredible tools that could help you live a more fulfilling and more incredible life. Dan, thank you so very much for being here and sharing this time with us. I deeply appreciate your time, your generosity, and sharing your journey with us here today.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
You bet. We'll see you next time, everyone, on another edition of A Handful of Hope. Bye-bye.